How did your parents react when you told them you were pregnant? When I got pregnant at 16, my ultra-conservative parents locked me in the basement for months because they said I was too contaminated by sin to ever be allowed around people again. I probably shouldn't have been surprised. My parents had spent years teaching Bible study classes about the dangers of moral corruption. My mom once made me sleep on the tile floor for 2 weeks because she caught me with a romance novel and said my bed was too pure for my disgusting mind. She'd even inspect underwear every morning to make sure I hadn't been touching myself. Meanwhile, Dad in my bathroom to make sure I wasn't doing anything ungodly when I was alone. And when he found out one of our neighbors was gay, he organized prayer circles and protests outside their house until they moved away. When I confessed to them that I was pregnant, they told me to go to the basement so they could discuss what to do. I had no idea when I closed the door behind me that I was sealing my own casket. I would never see the rest of the house again. After I pounded on the locked door for hours, Dad finally told me, "You'll live down there for the rest of your life because your sin has made you toxic, and this is the only way to protect society from you." They said I would be kept in complete isolation with no human contact for the rest of my life. Over the next few days, they soundproofed the walls and cut a small slot in the door so they could slide my meals in like I was a dangerous animal. When they had to come down to the basement, they'd wear gloves and masks and demand that I stay 10 feet away. If I got too close, they'd punish me by cutting the electricity to the basement and withholding meals for days. I had nothing but a small bathroom, a wooden chair, and an endless stack of religious literature. When pregnancy made me horribly sick, I'd beg for a doctor, but they told me they wouldn't risk the safety of the world by letting me out. One day when I was 8 months pregnant and my dad was down collecting my trash with tongs, I asked what their plan was for the baby. He proudly told me they'd found an underground religious group that would purify newborns by submerging them in ice water until they stopped breathing and were reborn without sin. He said, when it's reborn, it will come back as a child untainted by its war of a mother. That was what broke me. I'd managed to survive by imagining my child living a good life, even if I never would. But they were going to kill my baby, and that was a bridge too far. So that night when Dad came with dinner, I told him the bathroom was flooding. He demanded I step away from the door, which I did. But I had been secretly gathered all my dirty clothes, and when he opened the basement door, I started throwing them at him while screaming, "The demons are on you! The demons burrow into your soul!" along with some Latin for good measure that I'd picked up from my religious reading. Dad started panicking and tried to rush back up the stairs. Mom heard and came running, and while she shrieked in horror at her poor contaminated husband, I charged straight at both of them, spitting and yelling. They scrambled backward up the stairs, screaming that their skin was on fire, and I was able to push past them and run out the front door while they were writhed on the floor begging God for mercy. I ran until I couldn't breathe and then gasped in huge breaths of fresh air for the first time in forever. I could feel my baby wriggling around inside me, like it knew that we were finally free too. I went straight to the nearest hospital, thinking they'd know how to help me. But once I was there, I was immediately put in handcuffs, and I realized my nightmare wasn't over. My parents had called the police and reported me as a dangerous person who was spreading disease and needed to be quarantined immediately for public safety. They told officers that I was delusional and believed I was pregnant when I was actually just possessed by demons, and they provided fake medical documents claiming I had been receiving psychiatric treatment for religious hallucinations. At first, the hospital treated me like a dangerous prisoner, just like my parents had. Everything changed after an ultrasound revealed I was absolutely pregnant, and then they started listening when I told them that my parents were liars. The police investigated my parents and found my basement prison and tracked the money that my dad had wired to the group planning to kill my baby. Both my parents were arrested, and I was finally free. I gave birth to my daughter at a women's shelter, and now we live in a different state while my parents rot in actual prison. I still have nightmares that someone's going to steal her while I'm sleeping and try to drown her. And being a teenage mom all on my own is the hardest thing I've ever done, harder than surviving in that basement by myself. But at least I'm raising a daughter who I know will never have to be scared of her family.